For my 40th birthday, my wife kept saying, "This one's special." I thought she meant a surprise trip. "You'll cry," she said, laughing. On the day, I came home and my family was gone. Just a balloon that read "Try harder." Hours later, I got tagged in a group chat, "Worst Husband Award Ceremony." 2 days later, my teenage daughter texted, "Mom says you're too embarrassed to face us." Are you? Me, "So, was this your idea of a surprise?" Her, "It was special. You just didn't show up for it. Like everything else." Me, "You planned this? The whole disappearance?" Her, "We didn't disappear, Nadine. We just stopped waiting for you to notice us." Me, "I didn't know it was this bad." Her, "That's what broke me the most. I used to roll my eyes at dramatic posts like this on Reddit. Thought most of them were fake or exaggerated. But then I found myself Googling emotional abandonment in marriage, curled up on the edge of a couch that used to seat 3, and realized I had become one of those women, the ones whose families leave not in a rage, but in silence. My name's Nadine. I'm 40. I've been with Mira, my wife, for 15 years. We met at a friend's ugly sweater party in Hoboken. She had on this god-awful Rudolph pullover with a blinking red nose and still managed to be the smartest, funniest person in the room. We weren't a match on paper. She was an academic, I was more hands-on, working in physical therapy. But somehow it clicked. We built a life in Maplewood, New Jersey. Nice neighborhood. Brick home, 2 stories. A small garden I always said I'd tend to more often. We had our daughter, Clara, when I was still in my 20s. She's 16 now. Smart. Sensitive. Sharp tongue when she wants to. From the outside, we looked solid. Inside? I started missing signs years ago. I used to travel more often for work, sometimes optional, sometimes not. But the truth is, it became easier to be on the road than in my own home. When Clara hit her moody teens and Mira started sounding more like a disappointed manager than a partner, I coped the only way I knew how. I pulled away. Mira used to be the kind of woman who would walk into the kitchen, announce she was making Thai curry at midnight, and blast Nina Simone while chopping lemongrass. She'd fall asleep in mismatched socks with her arm across my waist. Somewhere along the way, she stopped reaching for me. Or maybe I stopped being someone worth reaching for. I missed birthdays. Not all of them. Just the ones that mattered. Anniversaries too. There was one year I forgot until she texted me a photo of the flowers I never sent with a caption, "From me, to me." We fought. Then stopped fighting. You know how that goes. You think silence is peace. It's not. It's erosion. And then came this year, my 40th. Mira started hinting in July. "This one's special," she'd say over dinner. "You'll cry," she teased one night while refilling her wine. I thought it was a trip. Barcelona maybe. Or something nostalgic. A montage of our years together, maybe a surprise visit from her cousin in Toronto. That was how she worked. Always thoughtful, layered. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to an empty house. No note. No coffee. No breakfast tray. I texted Mira and Clara. Nothing. I thought maybe they were picking something up. Or setting up at a restaurant. Something big. When I walked through the door that afternoon, the house felt hollow. Like it had been aired out. Like people had moved out quietly. I saw one thing. A single white balloon tied to the coat rack. It bobbed slightly in the breeze from the AC. It said, in stiff, black letters, "Try harder." I actually laughed at first. Thought it was part of the joke. Mira's sense of humor was sharp like that. But when I walked through the house, my heart started to beat differently. Drawers were half empty. Closet shelves cleared out. Mira's laptop gone. Clara's sketchpad missing from her desk. The pillows on our bed were rearranged, hers gone. The fridge? Mostly empty. I posted on the door with a smiley face and no message. I called them. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Are you okay? What's happening? No answer. At 8:17 p.m., I got a WhatsApp notification. From a group I wasn't part of. Worst Husband Award Ceremony. It had one of those default icons. No joke, balloons and confetti. First thing I saw was a photo of me. Asleep on the couch, hand on my phone. Then another, me looking at my laptop while Clara sat at the table in the background holding something. A drawing maybe. Then screenshots. Cancelled main trip. Again. Said work emergency. Another, Clara's birthday. Mira handled everything. My stomach turned. There were memes. A fake award certificate. Even a fake acceptance speech someone had written for me. It would have been funny if it wasn't about me. At first I was furious. Embarrassed. Who the heck airs their marriage like this? But then I sat there, phone on my lap, staring at that balloon. Try harder. God. They didn't leave me with anger. They left me with homework. 2 days later, Clara texted. Mom says you're too embarrassed to face us. Are you? That hit harder than any meme. I wanted to reply right away, say no, say of course not. But I didn't. I sat with the question. Then I answered. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. She didn't text back. Next day she sent a photo. A drawing. It was 2 islands. Each with a house. A bridge half built between them. That was all. A week passed. Then 2. Mira never responded to my email. But she left the shared calendar open. She let Clara decide how much she wanted to talk. And Clara started texting more. One night she said, "You used to laugh more." I said, "You used to hug me more." She said, "I didn't feel like you wanted to be hugged." I didn't have a comeback. I'm not the villain in this story. But I'm not the hero either. I became the background character in my own family's life. And the moment they stopped asking me to step up, I finally noticed the silence. The days after Clara's drawing felt like walking on a frozen lake I'd only just realized was cracking beneath me. I stopped trying to write long messages, to fix everything with paragraphs and apologies. She didn't want speeches. Neither of them did. So I started small. I sent Clara a picture of my dinner one night, burned grilled cheese. Captioned it, "How does one survive without co-chefs?" She sent a laughing emoji. 1. Next day I got a message with a photo of her own dinner. Ramen, with a fried egg. It's sad, but it's mine. We didn't talk about what happened. Not directly. Just this strange sideways dance, like 2 people circling a bruise, waiting for someone to poke it first. I didn't see Mira until nearly a month after my birthday. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I had just gotten off work early and there was this strange sense in my chest that I should go somewhere. Not home. Not the office. Just anywhere else. I ended up at the park near our old favorite coffee shop, the one with mismatched chairs and jazz on vinyl. I was sitting on a bench, scrolling through old photos when she walked up behind me like she'd never left. She didn't say hello. Just sat. We sat in silence for maybe 3 minutes. The kind of silence that fills every inch of your body and then asks for more. She finally said, "I debated whether I wanted to see you before filing." I nodded. "Not because I wanted to hurt you," she added. "But because I was afraid it would hurt me." I didn't look at her. Just kept staring ahead. "You never hit me," she continued, voice calm. "You didn't cheat. You didn't scream. But I was disappearing right in front of you, and you didn't even blink." "I know. You didn't notice, Nadine. That's worse than anything." We sat there. People passed by. Kids laughed somewhere. A dog barked. Finally, I turned to her. I don't have a speech. I'm not going to beg. I know. And I hate that it took this for me to know. Her face stayed unreadable. That balloon? I said, a little laugh escaping me. Cruel and perfect. Mira smirked. You always hated when I was right. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. She stood up, brushed her jeans off, and said, I'll email the papers by Friday. Please don't stall. I won't. Then she walked away. I didn't fight the divorce. I didn't try to convince her we could fix it. That would have been selfish. What I did do, slowly, over the next several weeks, was start showing up. When Clara texted, I texted back. When she asked if I could come to her art exhibit at school, I cleared my whole day. I didn't show up with flowers or apologies, just with presents. That day at the exhibit, she introduced me to her art teacher as my mom. Not my mom who messed up. Just, my mom. Her painting? It had changed. Same 2 islands. But this time, the bridge was nearly finished. A few weeks later, I had lunch with Mira again. She didn't tell me she'd started seeing someone. I found out later, through a mutual friend. At first, it punched something in my chest. But honestly, she was allowed to start over. She deserved someone who didn't take her presence for granted. Someone who didn't answer, "How was your day?" with a grunt. Someone who asked about her lectures, her students, her headaches, her dreams. I hadn't been that person in years. And Clara? She was opening up more, too. Sent me playlists. Asked me what shows I was watching. Told me about a kid in her math class who always wore 2 watches. Little things, like she was testing the water to see if I could still hold her world without dropping it. One night, she messaged me out of nowhere. Do you miss us? I stared at the screen. Replied, every single day. She replied with a simple, okay. Nothing more. But I slept better that night than I had in months. Around the 3-month mark, I started therapy. Not couples therapy. Just me, in a chair, across from a woman named Inez who wore too many bracelets and didn't flinch when I said things like I didn't think I was that bad. Turns out, I was the kind of person who thought being tired was an excuse to stop participating. Inez helped me unpack how I confused showing up financially with showing up emotionally. Helped me understand why Clara always felt more like Mira's kid than mine. You weren't absent, Inez said. But you were silent. That leaves just as big a hole. Every week, I sat in that office and peeled back a little more. I started volunteering on weekends. Started cooking for myself. Started paying attention to people, to my own moods, to what made my hands shake. It wasn't about winning them back anymore. It was about becoming someone I wouldn't want to walk away from. About 4 months after the divorce papers came through, I stopped checking Mira's social media. Not because I didn't care, but because I realized I was starting to measure my healing against hers. And that wasn't fair to either of us. The photos showed her hiking with people I didn't recognize. Laughing at dinner tables I hadn't been invited to in years. She looked fine. And I resented that for exactly 5 minutes before I remembered that she had been grieving us long before she left. Maybe she wasn't over it. Maybe she had just already mourned it. Clara, on the other hand, was letting me back in. Bit by bit. I didn't ask her for more than she was offering. I didn't try to define our time together. But I started picking her up from school every other Friday, per the agreement. She never ran up to the car. Never flung open the door with a grin. But she showed up, backpack slung, headphones in, and quietly slid into the passenger seat. Hey, I'd say. Hey, she'd respond. Silence would fill the car for a while. Sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes the whole ride. But every now and then, she'd say something like, "Did you know if you sneeze too hard, you can break a rib?" And I'd smile. How do you know that? Reddit. Good. Continue your education. She didn't laugh. But her mouth twitched. Once, during a weekend together, she asked if I still had the balloon. I told her I did. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, just, good. I kept the balloon in a drawer in the kitchen, under the potholders. I didn't look at it often, but I never threw it away. It had deflated into a wrinkled plastic shell, like a memory worn out from being replayed too often. That weekend, I cooked dinner. An actual dinner. Pasta, garlic bread, a roasted eggplant dish I found on a blog. Clara sat at the table, scrolling on her phone but not retreating into her room. I brought the plate over and she looked up. "This smells edible," she said. High praise. We ate in silence for the first few bites. Then she said, "Mom used to do the weird thing with rosemary. You remember that?" "She used to soak it in lemon juice before roasting," I said. "Said it made it taste less piney." Clara nodded. "She still do that?" "Yeah," Clara said. "But she uses way less salt now. She says it makes her ankles swell." I laughed, unexpectedly. She always overdid the sea salt. We paused. Then she said, "It's weird talking about her with you." Like? I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say. You're allowed to say anything. She nodded again. Okay. And that was the first time I realized that rebuilding didn't have to mean fixing. It just meant making space where none existed before. At work, things shifted too. My supervisor pulled me aside one day and asked, "You okay?" I said I was fine, like everyone does. He said, "You've been more present." It surprised me. Not that I was being noticed, but that I hadn't been, before. Turns out when you spend a decade emotionally absent, people notice when you finally show up. I started organizing group walks with a few patients post-rehab. Just casual, no pressure things. We'd meet at the South Mountain Reservation Trail and take slow walks. One of them, a woman named Patrice recovering from knee surgery, told me, "You listen more than most people." I almost laughed. Because for years, I didn't listen at all. At least not where it counted. One afternoon, Clara asked if she could paint on the wall of the spare bedroom. Like, actually paint on it? I asked. Yeah, she said. Something abstract. Just to try. I thought about it. That room had become sort of a dead zone anyway. A clutter of unused items and things I didn't want to think about. Sure, I said. Why not? She spent the whole weekend there, music in her earbuds, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back in a messy bun. I peeked in once. There were lines, swirls, what looked like two mirrored trees connected by a tangle of red thread. "It's intense," I said. She looked at it. "It's not done," she said. "But it's about repair." I swallowed. I like that. She gave me a small smile, then dipped her brush again and turned back to the wall. We still don't talk about the Worst Husband Award ceremony group chat. It's sort of a ghost that lingers in the background of every laugh, every story we share now. It's not that I'm afraid to mention it. I think we both know the moment I bring it up, it becomes real in a way we can't undo. So we let it rest. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I heard Mira humming in the kitchen. Sometimes I think I see Clara at the edge of a memory, 5 years old and running across the backyard with bubbles clinging to her shirt. I try not to get stuck in those memories. But I also don't push them away anymore. They're part of the story. Not the end. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Mira asked if we could meet. Not at a park this time, at her new place in Montclair. She said Clara would be out with friends, and that she wanted to talk about logistics. I knew it wasn't just logistics. I wore a navy sweater she used to say brought out the color in my eyes. Not to impress her, just to remember that I still existed in the world as someone worth noticing. Her place was warm, minimal, artsy. The kind of house people who've let go of old ghosts tend to build around themselves. She handed me tea. Rooibos. My favorite. That surprised me. We sat across from each other, the silence not as heavy this time. She's happier, Mira said. Clara. I nodded. I'm glad. She talks about you more. She says you're consistent. That word, consistent, hit me harder than any compliment. I spent so long trying to be spectacular when all they ever needed was someone reliable. Mira sighed. You're not the same. No, I agreed. I'm not. She looked at me a long time. I kept waiting for you to fight. For me. For Clara. For yourself. I thought letting go was the respectful thing to do. It was, she said, after a moment. But it was also cowardly. We didn't argue. Instead, I said, I don't want anything from you. I just want Clara to be okay. She stood, walked over to the bookshelf, and pulled something out, a small notebook. She handed it to me. Inside were sketches Clara had made over the last few months. Pages filled with me, her, bridges, buildings mid-renovation, old houses being gutted and rebuilt. At the back was a page that read, My mom isn't perfect. But she's here now. And that's something. I closed the book and held it like something sacred. Later that month, Clara entered her mural into a youth art competition hosted by a local nonprofit. I went to the exhibit in Newark with her, and for the first time, she introduced me not just as my mom, but the one who helped me paint this. It was a mural of 3 homes, each in a different stage of construction. One had collapsed entirely. The second was stripped to its studs. The third had a full roof and warm yellow lights in the windows. The caption underneath? This is what rebuilding looks like. It won first place. When they asked her to speak, Clara turned to me and said, Can you come up? I hesitated, but followed. In front of a crowd, she said, This painting is about how we break things sometimes. And how we fix them. And about how sometimes the people you thought you lost come back, not as who they were, but as who they were supposed to be. I didn't cry. I smiled. The kind of smile that comes from finally feeling seen. A few weeks later, Mira messaged me out of the blue. Found an old voicemail you left me, she wrote. You were singing along to Fleetwood Mac, totally off-key. I was mad at you that day, but I kept the message. I didn't know what to say. So I just replied, Funny how memories work. She responded with a heart emoji. That was all. And then came the part one didn't expect, the part that gave me the most satisfying kind of revenge. Mira's new partner, Jules, broke up with her. Not publicly. Not dramatically. Just disappeared emotionally. Slowly. In all the ways I had done. Mira never said it out loud, but Clara told me. She says it's like talking to a wall, she said one day in the car. She said she never thought she'd be the one ignored. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just said, that absorbs. She deserves better. Clara nodded. She said she finally gets it now. What it must have felt like, to be you, waking up in that house with nothing left. I blinked. She said that? I asked, not quite trusting myself. Yeah, Clara said. She said she should have handled things differently. She said, you tried in your own way. That was the moment. Not when Clara hugged me for the first time in months. Not when she started calling me after school just to chat. Not even when Mira complimented my cooking during a shared holiday dinner we both helped plan. That moment, where my silence, my calm, my refusal to retaliate, spoke louder than any dramatic monologue ever could. That was my revenge. Not her regret. But her recognition. That I'd changed. That I'd grown. That I'd become the mother, the partner, the person they both once hoped I'd be. And I didn't do it to win them back. I did it so I could live with myself. But damn if it didn't feel good to be seen. Not just forgiven. Understood.